I found out my friend had been dating my ex behind my back, but I used it to my advantage. I never thought something like this could happen to me. I mean, you trust your friends, right? You trust them with your secrets, your feelings, and sometimes even your exes. But when I found out that one of my closest friends had been secretly dating my ex behind my back, it felt like a punch to the gut. To make it worse, they thought they were being sly, hiding it from me, assuming I wouldn't find out. Well, they were wrong. Not only did I find out, but I decided to turn the tables in a way they never saw coming. This is the story of how I found out about the betrayal, how I used it to my advantage, and how it changed everything. It started off like any other day. I was hanging out with my friend Matt at the local bar, just grabbing drinks and chatting about life. We'd known each other for years, and I considered him one of my closest friends. He knew about everything that had happened between me and my ex, Emily. In fact, he had been one of the first people to support me when we broke up. He'd seen the way she had treated me, and he was there for me through the rough patches. Or so I thought. But something felt off. It was subtle at first. Matt had always been a little cryptic about his personal life. Nothing too strange, just that kind of, I don't really talk about it much attitude. But when he started avoiding certain topics, particularly anything related to Emily, I noticed. I'd ask how he'd been doing with work or his dating life, and he'd deflect, making it seem like he was too busy to talk about it. One night, as we were hanging out again, the atmosphere felt different. Matt seemed nervous, almost twitchy. It was like he was hiding something, and it was starting to make me uncomfortable. I decided to confront him. "Yo, man, what's going on? You've been weird lately. You and Emily still talking or something?" I asked, trying to make it sound casual, even though I was growing more suspicious by the second. Matt hesitated for a second, his eyes darting away from mine. "Nah, man, we're not talking, you know that?" He took a long sip of his beer, clearly trying to brush it off. But that answer didn't sit right with me. There was something about the way he said it, the hesitation. It felt too rehearsed. So, I let it go for the night, but I kept my guard up. I knew something was off, and I was determined to figure out what it was. A few days later, I got the confirmation I never wanted. It all started when I ran into a mutual friend, Sarah, at a coffee shop. We started chatting, catching up on life. At some point, the topic of Matt and Emily came up, and Sarah mentioned something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "You know, Matt and Emily are really cute together," she said casually, stirring her coffee. I blinked, trying to process her words. "What do you mean, together?" Sarah gave me a confused look. "You didn't know? I thought you and Matt were still close. They've been dating for a while now." I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there, trying to keep my composure, while my mind raced. Was this a joke? Did Sarah know something I didn't? Was Matt seriously dating Emily, behind my back, after everything I'd told him? It didn't make sense. I excused myself, telling Sarah I had to leave. As I walked out, my hands were shaking. I felt like the world around me was spinning. Matt had been acting weird, sure, but this was a betrayal I never saw coming. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I got them. I called Matt almost immediately, but he didn't pick up. My anxiety grew as I dialed again, then texted, "We need to talk, now." It wasn't long before he finally responded, but the text wasn't what I was expecting. "Can we talk tomorrow? I have some stuff going on tonight." I wasn't going to wait until tomorrow. I had to confront him now. I drove over to his place, my heart pounding in my chest, not knowing what kind of conversation I was walking into. When I knocked on Matt's door, my stomach was in knots. I had no idea how he was going to react. Was he going to deny it, try to justify it? Or was he going to own up to everything and face the consequences? I didn't know what was worse, what he might say, or the idea that my trust in him was completely shattered. He opened the door, his usual easygoing smile replaced by a look of discomfort. He tried to greet me casually, but I could see the tension in his eyes. "Hey man, what's going on?" he asked, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't waste any time. I didn't want to drag this out. "Cut the crap, Matt. I know about you and Emily. How long has this been going on?" His face went pale, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. Then finally he sighed and ran a hand through his hair, clearly trying to think of the right words. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this, man." I wasn't in the mood for excuses. "How long, Matt?" I repeated, my voice growing a little more intense. "How long have you been seeing her behind my back?" He lowered his head, clearly struggling with the situation. "It started a few months ago, after you guys broke up. We were both going through some things, and I don't know, I just started talking to her. It didn't seem like a big deal at first. But then, I guess I got feelings for her. I couldn't believe it. My best friend, the person I trusted with all the details of my breakup, had gone behind my back and started dating my ex. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. My gut churned with a mix of anger, betrayal, and hurt. You knew how much she meant to me, I said, my voice shaking. And you still did this. You knew the things she did to me, and you just went for it? Matt looked down, guilt written all over his face. I didn't plan for it to happen like this. I should have told you, I know, but I didn't want to hurt you more, and I honestly didn't know how to approach it. I didn't want to mess up our friendship. I felt the weight of his words, but it didn't change anything. The damage was done. I could see he was genuinely sorry, but that didn't undo the fact that he had broken my trust in the worst way possible. I can't believe you, Matt, I said, shaking my head. You should have talked to me, but you went behind my back. That's not something I can just forget. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence between us. Matt stood there, his eyes filled with regret, and I stood there, trying to process everything that had just happened. I left Matt's apartment that night feeling completely drained. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, betrayal, sadness. But mostly, I felt a deep sense of loss. Losing a relationship with someone you trusted so deeply wasn't something you could just shake off. And as for Matt, it felt like I had just lost a friend I thought I'd have forever. I spent the next few days reflecting on everything. What did this mean for me and my friendship with Matt? Could I ever look at him the same way again? And what about Emily, the person who I had once believed I could be with forever? Was she even worth the heartbreak anymore? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I had to take control of the situation, and I had to use this moment to my advantage. I wasn't going to sit back and wallow in hurt. No, I was going to turn the tables. I took some time away from both Matt and Emily. I needed space to think clearly. During that time, I worked on myself, focusing on my career, reconnecting with other friends, and just getting my head straight. But as I did, I realized something important. I had the power here. Sure, I had been hurt, but I wasn't going to let their actions ruin me. I knew I had to confront both of them again, but this time, I wasn't just going to react out of anger or frustration. This time, I was going to be strategic. I was going to get ahead of this, use it to redefine the narrative, and, most importantly, make sure I came out on top. A week passed, and I had cooled down enough to think about what I was going to do next. I'd been thinking a lot about how Matt and Emily had acted, and what I could do to turn this betrayal to my advantage. One thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going to let this become my story of failure. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power. I couldn't control their actions, but I could control how I responded to them. I decided to meet with both of them again, together. I knew they had been avoiding me, but this time, I wasn't just going to be the angry person confronting them. I was going to be calm, in control, and I was going to lay out my expectations for the future. I texted Matt first, letting him know we needed to talk again. To my surprise, he responded quickly, agreeing to meet. The message from Emily came a little later, but she too agreed to meet in person. The plan was set. I was ready. When we met, it was clear from the start that the air was tense. Matt sat across from me, avoiding eye contact. Emily was next to him, looking uncomfortable, but also avoiding my gaze. I could tell they were both nervous, probably wondering what I was going to say. I started the conversation calmly. Look, I'm not here to fight. I just need to lay out where I stand, and then we can go our separate ways. But I'm going to be clear with you both. I'm not going to let either of you disrespect me like this again. What you did was wrong, and while I'm not happy about it, I've come to terms with it. But now I need some things from both of you. They both looked at me, unsure of what I meant, and I could see a hint of relief on their faces, like they thought this might go easier than expected. I'm not asking you to grovel, but I need acknowledgement. Matt, I've been your friend for years, and you've been one of the few people I trusted. But now you've taken something from me, my trust, and that's going to take time to rebuild. I need to know that this won't happen again. You need to respect my space and understand that I won't tolerate this kind of betrayal anymore. Matt nodded slowly, clearly absorbing the weight of my words. I understand, he said quietly. I'm really sorry, man. I messed up, and I know it. I won't let this happen again. I turned to Emily. And you, Emily, you don't get a free pass. We've had our history, but what you did, getting involved with Matt behind my back, wasn't just disrespectful to me. It was also a betrayal of our relationship. I'm not angry anymore, but I need to make it clear that I'm not playing games. I don't want drama, but I don't want either of you thinking you can take advantage of my kindness. Emily shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable, but listening intently. I get it. I should have been more upfront with you. I'm sorry. At that moment, I felt a sense of relief. I had just taken control of the situation. I wasn't just the guy getting hurt by these actions. I was the one setting boundaries, reclaiming my peace, and showing them both that I wasn't going to let their choices affect me in a negative way. I'm done with the drama. I've made peace with this, and I'm moving on. But know this, I'm not going to let either of you take more than you already have. You both need to respect my decisions from here on out. If you can do that, we can all move forward. If not, I'll make sure that I'm never part of your games again. With that, the conversation was over. There were no apologies, no emotional scenes. But I didn't need them. I had made my point, and I had come out stronger than I ever thought I would. The next few days felt strangely peaceful. I had confronted the situation head on, and while it was still a bit awkward with Matt and Emily, I felt like I was finally in control again. For the first time in a while, I felt empowered by my decisions rather than consumed by anger or resentment. I focused on myself more than I ever had in the past few months. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with, threw myself into my work, and started doing things for me, things I hadn't done in a while. It was a breath of fresh air. I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of betrayal and deception that had hung over me for so long. But the truth is, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The moments of doubt crept in now and then. I'd think about what could have been if things had turned out differently with Emily. I'd think about how close I was with Matt and how badly he had hurt me. It was a process, and healing didn't happen overnight. The most challenging part, however, was dealing with the feeling of being left behind. I had known that Matt and Emily had a history, but I never thought they'd act on it behind my back. There were moments when I felt like the fool, questioning everything I thought I knew about them. But instead of wallowing in that, I used those feelings to fuel my personal growth. I reminded myself that while I couldn't control their actions, I could control how I responded. I decided to take this opportunity to become the person I was always meant to be, stronger, more independent, and more assertive. I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. A few weeks later, Matt reached out to me, cautiously at first. He wanted to apologize again, and while I appreciated the gesture, I had already forgiven him in my own way. I wasn't angry anymore, but I was clear on where our relationship stood. It was no longer the same, but it didn't have to be a source of pain. I accepted his apology, but I made it clear that things would be different moving forward. As for Emily, I didn't hear from her much after our confrontation. I didn't expect to. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. Our paths would likely never cross in the same way again, and honestly, I was okay with that. I had to let go, for my own peace of mind. As the weeks went by, the sting of betrayal began to fade. I was finally feeling like myself again, stronger, more independent, and confident in my choices. I had turned a painful situation into a moment of self-growth. It wasn't just about moving on from Emily and Matt. It was about discovering a version of myself that I hadn't known existed. I decided to take a few risks that I had been putting off. One of the first things I did was sign up for a class I'd always wanted to take but never had the time for. It was a creative writing course, something I'd always been passionate about but had never made room for in my life. I was excited to learn, but I was also eager to challenge myself. The class turned out to be everything I needed. I found myself getting lost in the stories I wrote, using my experiences as inspiration. It was cathartic to express myself in a way that wasn't tied to my past or my relationships. It reminded me that there was so much more to life than the pain and drama I had been consumed with for so long. Beyond my personal growth, I also started focusing on my career with a new mindset. I wasn't letting anything hold me back anymore. I was proactive about asking for promotions, taking on new projects, and networking with people who could help me get to the next level. I was building momentum in all areas of my life, and I couldn't have been more excited for what the future held. But the most surprising part of this entire journey was realizing that I had learned to trust again, just not in the way I had before. I wasn't rushing into relationships or friendships. I wasn't looking for validation from anyone. Instead, I was focused on building the kind of life I truly wanted for myself. And if people came along for the ride, then great. As the months passed, I began to realize something important. This experience had completely reshaped my understanding of friendships. It had always been easy to think that a friend's loyalty was a given. Matt and I had been close for years, and I never imagined he would betray me in such a way. But I'd learned that loyalty is something that has to be earned, and once broken, it's hard to rebuild. Matt had tried reaching out a few more times, but I was careful with how I responded. I wasn't shutting him out completely, but I made sure to establish clear boundaries. I had learned that just because someone was once a close friend didn't mean they were entitled to that place in my life forever. I wasn't going to let history dictate my future. Over time, I started to realize that not all friendships were meant to last forever, and that was okay. People change, circumstances change, and sometimes the best thing for both parties is to move on. I didn't need to force things with Matt. If he truly valued our friendship, he would respect my boundaries and prove it through actions, not just apologies. I also found myself growing closer to other friends, the ones who had been there for me when I needed them most. They had been supportive and understanding, and I began to appreciate them more than ever. These were the people who had proven their loyalty, and I felt a deeper connection with them now that I had learned the value of trust and respect. I found a new perspective on relationships in general. It wasn't just about love or romance. It was about mutual respect, understanding, and communication. I wasn't going to settle for less. If I didn't feel valued in a friendship, I was no longer afraid to walk away. And if someone had been part of my life in the past, but they no longer served a positive role, I learned to let go without guilt. By now, I had gained more clarity about what I wanted in life, and my confidence had grown stronger. I had faced a difficult, painful betrayal, and instead of letting it define me, I had taken control. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My professional life began to soar. With the focus and determination I had gained from handling the personal drama, I dove headfirst into my career. I pushed myself harder than I had before, and it paid off. I landed a major promotion that I had been working toward for months. The confidence I'd found in handling my personal life had spilled over into my work, and it felt like everything was aligning in a way I never expected. As I started to receive more recognition at work, I also started to see the benefits in my personal life. I felt more secure in myself, more grounded. I stopped relying on validation from others and began to trust myself more. I took on challenges that once seemed intimidating, speaking at conferences, leading important projects, and even making decisions that I had previously doubted I could handle. It was liberating. But the most significant change wasn't just in my career. It was in how I viewed relationships. I had spent so much time questioning my worth when things with Matt and Emily went south. But now I realized that my value wasn't tied to anyone else's actions. It was about how I carried myself, how I treated others, and how I chose to grow. My worth was built on my ability to rise above challenges, not on staying stuck in the past. In the weeks following everything, I started seeing the world with a new perspective. It wasn't just about moving on from the betrayal. It was about embracing what I had learned and using it to shape a brighter future. I was no longer the person who let others dictate my emotions or choices. I was the one in control now, and that was the most empowering feeling I could ever have. A few months passed, and things were finally starting to feel like they had come full circle. Matt and Emily were no longer part of my daily life, but I was in a much better place. I was more focused, more confident, and most importantly, I was more comfortable with myself than I had ever been. I'd learned a hard lesson in trust and betrayal, but it had shaped me into a stronger person. I had closed the chapter on that part of my life, and now I was opening new ones. I focused on the things that made me happy, on the relationships that mattered, and on goals that had nothing to do with past mistakes. I met new people, formed new friendships, and even started dating again. This time, I wasn't rushing anything. I wasn't looking for validation or trying to fill any voids. I was dating for me, because I was finally in a place where I could love someone else without losing myself in the process. It wasn't perfect. Life never is. But it felt like everything was falling into place. I wasn't stuck in the past anymore, and I had no intention of letting it define my future. I had taken control of my narrative, and it was a powerful feeling. But there was something else I had learned, that every setback can be an opportunity. Sometimes life throws curveballs, and while they might feel like setbacks, they often serve as turning points. My ex and my best friend's betrayal was one of the hardest things I had ever experienced, but it also taught me more about myself than I could have imagined. It showed me that I was capable of handling much more than I thought, and now, as I move forward into the future, I feel more prepared for whatever comes my way. Because no matter what, I know I can handle it. I've learned that no matter how much people might try to hurt you, you have the power to rise above and make the most of it. It's easy to get caught up in the pain of betrayal and let it consume you, but as I've learned, it's how we respond to those situations that shapes who we become. If you've ever gone through something similar, whether it's a friend betraying you, a breakup, or feeling let down by someone you trusted, I want you to know that you are not defined by that pain. You are defined by how you rise from it. Have you ever experienced a betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found strength in this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more stories of resilience and growth.